English philosopher John Stuart Mill is considered one of the most formidable thinkers of the 19th century. His father, James Mill, a close associate of Jeremy Bentham, raised him in the tradition of utilitarianism, famously promoted by Jeremy Bentham. Mill's essay, Utilitarianism, was written in between 1861 and 63 and is considered a classic work on utilitarian thought. Besides that, he wrote a number of other texts showing that his range of interests were remarkably wide. In these works, he takes a liberal approach to economic questions, the liberty of the individual and press, democracy, and feminism. In all these cases, he seeks to defend that liberal approach in utilitarian terms. Utilitarianism has its philosophical ancestors among ancient Greek thinkers such as Epicurus. It is basically a way to look at morality of right and wrong. For them, action is right if it tends to promote happiness, and wrong if it tends to promote the reverse of happiness. Not just the happiness of the performer of the action, but also that of everyone affected by it. So it is known as the greatest happiness principle. By happiness, they means experience of pleasure and absence of pain, which is why utilitarianism is often called a hedonistic theory. Hedonistic theory identifies the good with pleasure and tries to maximize the good, that is, bring about the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Utilitarian theory is also a particular type of consequentialist theory that says that the rightness of an act is determined by its consequences, in particular by the amount of utility or usefulness that it produces. Here it means happiness. Also, the motive has nothing to do with the morality of the action. For example, if one saves another creature from drowning, he does what is morally right, whether his motive be duty or the hope of being paid for his trouble. Mill's account of utilitarianism. Bentham believed that pleasures are quantifiable or calculable mathematically, so that moral judgments could be made. He developed what is called the philosophic calculus or hedonistic calculus to determine best course of action using 7 criteria. But Bentham was criticized for reducing human experience to mere sum of units of pleasures, a doctrine worthy only of swine. To Mill, people were more capable than focusing only on the sensual pleasures such as eating, drinking, sleeping that are common to both pigs and people. Moreover, Bentham said in a famous quote that the game pushpin is of equal value as poetry if it gives the same intensity and duration of pleasure. Now, this suggests that the quantity for Bentham is more important and that pleasure depends on quantity alone and that there is no qualitative differences in pleasure. But to this, Mill disagrees and insisted that pleasure could also be distinguished qualitatively. He says that human pleasures have faculties much superior than animalistic ones once they were made aware of the higher faculties. They do not regard anything else happiness which does not include the gratification of those faculties. Here we look at some of the points which set both pleasures apart. Higher pleasures involves awareness of fulfillment of the distinctly human capacities for growth, whereas hallowing in fun activities contributes little to character development or social progress. There is a long-term benefit in striving for higher forms of pleasure. They are more worthwhile, but even though lower pleasures may be easier to come by, Mill does not put bodily pleasures over superiority of mental. A person of higher faculty often suffers more, but he would not choose a lower quality existence, whereas lower um, pleasures are more abundant and accessible. Higher pleasures are of the intellect, of the feelings and sentiments, and of the moral sentiments, whereas lower pleasures are appealing to the sense that are not costly. This is about understanding the differences of quality in pleasure, or what makes one pleasure more valuable than another. Here Mills writes that it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied, better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. He argues that no human would exchange his higher capacities for a life of a swinish satisfaction, even though knowing that pursuing higher pleasures would lead to greater amount of discontent, still one would not resign it for any quantity of other pleasure which their nature is capable of. They are justified in ascribing to the preferred enjoyment a superiority in quality, so far outweighing quantity as to render it, in comparison, of small amount. Hence, the only person capable of determining the most desirable pleasure than the other, independent of its greater amount, is someone who has experienced both pleasures. By contrast, and if the fool or the pig are of different opinions, it is because they only know their side of the question. So that is John Stuart Mill's Utilitarian Philosophy. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please do let me know in the comments down below and give a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.